Good evening, everyone. I'm Linda Flores Olson, and I'm your substitute today. Dr. Bob asked me to be here with you, and I'm so excited for many reasons. Number one, we have a fantastic guest that I can't wait to introduce you to. She's a dear friend of mine, but before we get to that, I wanted to let you know that I am the Executive Director of the Houston Hispanic Forum, and another reason why I'm very excited about being here is that I graduated from U of H downtown. So many years ago, I graduated with a degree in biological and physical sciences, and I took a right turn, and I have been in nonprofit management for the last 30 years. And so with that said, I want to introduce you to our guest today, my friend, Kimberly Sterling. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you. I think I could be interviewing you and asking you the same questions because you're an encyclopedia of knowledge.
Well, we're so glad that you're here.
It's a treat.
So for those of you that don't know Kimberly, she is the president of Sterling and Associates, and she does some fantastic things all around Houston. If you ever have the good fortune to go to her office, she has this wall of honor, and you just sit there and look at all of the things that she's done. It's really amazing. She's really a strong pillar in our community, and so we're so excited. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So today we're talking about fund development, fundraising, and you are the master. Everybody in nonprofit management in Houston knows that anytime you're looking to do a capital campaign or if you have a complex fundraising problem, they call Kimberly because she's the expert. So tell us about your organization and tell us about your role.
Well, I'll tell you first about Sterling and Associates because that's my home organization, but then I also get to work with so many nonprofits and I consider all of them to be my organizations. So I'll tell you a little bit about the role we play with both. At Sterling Associates, we have a team of about 12 people, and we work in partnership with nonprofit organizations, big ones and small ones, and we just go in and try to understand where they are in their growth and what their goals are, or sometimes they need help figuring out what their goals are, and then we put together plans and roll up our sleeves to help them achieve their missions. So it's really a treat. My role is sort of like the quarterback in the organization, and so I get to be on the field and work with our clients, but I also get to help figure out what our strategies are as a company and help make sure that we have the right people doing the right thing at the right time. So it's really, really a pleasure. So in our role with nonprofits, I'm more like the coach. So if we're going to make the sports analogy, so with nonprofit organizations, we'll come in and, for example, we're working with the Houston Food Bank now. At one point I was on this program or doing a class with Brian Green, who I think taught this class last year. So in that situation, they want to undertake a capital campaign. We worked with them on an earlier one. And so we came in and met with members of their board and staff and just learned about what they wanted to accomplish and then thought about what leadership do they need to bring this about, what kinds of prospects would be interested in supporting this kind of a project. How do they tell their story? Because lots of organizations live in their own world, and then it's hard for them to think of how others will see them. So we come in and learn as much as we can, but keep that third-party eye so that we can help them connect to the rest of the world. So,
well, you brought up an interesting point. You know, a lot of times nonprofits, they work on a shoestring budget, okay, most of the time. And so it's very difficult, speaking from experience, it's very difficult to work on the organization when you're working in the organization on all the day-to-day activities.
that is so true.
So having somebody like you that can come in, you know, very objectively and be able to see the whole situation, you can really help an organization. So what was the turning point in your life when you decided, you know, I could help organizations? How did that happen?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I always had a little bit of a save the world mentality. I think that you did too. I was the kid that grew up always wanting to volunteer for everything and sell the most Girl Scout cookies and, you know, you name it. But I always enjoyed business and communications and things like that as well. So when I got out of college, I went to work for the advertising business, and there were so many things that I enjoyed about it, so many things that I learned about it, but I found that working on the pro bono clients that we had, it just made my heart beat more, and I just wanted to do it more. And so when I got out of graduate school, I jumped into the nonprofit sector and never looked back. It's my life's work.
That's amazing.
It's fantastic.
So what is your favorite way of fundraising? There's lots, there's corporate fundraising and there are capital campaigns and major gifts. What is your favorite way of fundraising?
Oh, it's so hard to say because, when you think about all the money that's coming into the nonprofit sector, more than $360 billion last year. I think many people focus their attention on corporations and on foundations, and those are important sources. But actually, 80% of the money that's given in the United States comes from you and me and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and people like that. And I think that giving brings people great joy. And so what really excites me more than anything else is working with a cause, because nonprofits are all in business to make the world better in some way, and helping to bring people to that cause who also care about it. And even though they're not in the trenches every day working in the nonprofit, no matter what that group might be doing, it might be teaching kids, it might be feeding homeless people, it might be a cultural organization. They're not doing that work, but they can help advance that work. And I don't know about you, but I suspect that when you support charities that you care about, it makes you feel great. It makes me feel great too. And when you see that money is just something that these groups need to make the world better and to bring change about in very positive ways, that's my favorite thing, is unlocking those individual donors.
It's amazing when you work with donors and you find that that sweet spot where the mission of the donor and the mission of the organization crisscross, that sweet little spot, and you just feel like you've won the lottery.
It's a total
not
home
for
run.
yourself really, but for the donor. But it's so satisfying knowing that you played a small part of that.
And then they get so much meaning out of seeing the way their resources are used to advance the work of the organization. It's really fantastic.
So with your company, what are the different ways of fundraising that you help organizations with? And can you explain what each of them is?
Sure. I'll just give you a little overview, and I'll just comment at the beginning that when I started out in this business, and I hate to tell you that I really started out in nonprofits in 1984, which is such a long time ago. But at that point, I was a development director, and I was very top producing because I could get out 2 or 3 grant proposals a week. It was all about grant writing. And that's still important, so I'll just start with that. I mean, foundations and to some extent corporations or their corporate foundations give money. And so that's one thing we do, is figure out what foundations have interest in certain areas, and then we contact them and get advice from them about whether this is something they would consider, and then we write proposals and submit them and follow up, and then ideally money comes in. That's one thing. But over the years, so many other kinds of activities have been added because, first of all, there's so many more nonprofits than there used to be. So we've had to get very creative. So lots more events. I think maybe 30 years ago, there would be one big gala event a week in Houston. Now there are 10 a night.
Right.
And so events are important not only for raising money, although they do, but as you know so well, events are a way to introduce people to your cause. And so they serve multiple kinds of purposes. And so we like to work on events, not only events, but we like to work on events that will help people have a good time, really learn something about an organization, and contribute to the bottom line. So there's event fundraising.
In terms of special events, they're just so time consuming.
They are.
But we know that they do pay off because, like you said, it introduces new people, new audiences to your mission. Is there a trend in terms of special events? Are golf tournaments coming back? Are people doing sporting clay shoots? What is the trend?
I think people are trying to come up with everything they can come up with. So, golf tournaments, your traditional black tie galas, other kinds of things with, special themes, fun runs, walks, you name it. I do think that nonprofits leave money on the table if they let their guests leave, and then that's the end of that relationship until next year when the dinner comes around again. I really think the greatest benefit for doing special events is to use that as a way to begin a process with a donor and then connect with them after the event and bring them back and take them on a tour and let them see what you're doing and experience it and understand it. And then when they start writing checks to you and supporting you, and volunteering for you, not just because they're being entertained or being fed a nice meal or playing golf, but because they just care about it, that's when you really get into a more major donor development thing. And that's what makes the time worth it. Because it's an expensive way to raise money from a time standpoint. So that's one.
Absolutely. So in I can't remember the number, 10, 20,000 nonprofits in Houston.
Almost 23,000
so
in the Houston
very
region.
Crowded. So is there a central location if I want to plan a gala for the Houston Hispanic Forum? Who do I call to find out if there are any galas happening October 3rd?
Well, there's the social book, the Black Book, and it's online now, although there really is a hard copy one too, and that's a good place to look. But not everybody remembers or chooses to put their event in there, but you do have to be careful, especially if there are organizations that are doing an event around the time that you want to, where you have an overlap in your donors and your supporters, because you have to be careful about that.
So at the Houston Hispanic Forum, we do Career and Education Day, and it usually happens in February. And so, that's when the rodeo is starting to rev up. And so we always check and see what's the rodeo doing.
Yeah, you don't want it to be on that Friday when the trail riders come in or the opening night or anything like that.
because it would be disastrous for us.
Yeah, good point.
So, so I have been a fundraiser for a long time, like you. And people say to me, wow, you're so good at fundraising. You just, you go in and you're just so confident and you walk away with a big check. How do you do that? And, I don't really have an answer for that, but I know that a lot of people are really intimidated when it comes to raising money for the organizations. And so with your experience, the customers that you work with or your clients or your partners, what kind of advice do you give them when they say, ooh, I'm just not sure if I can ask for money?
Oh, it's so funny. That's such a big question. And we actually have a little bit of a workshop that we offer about 10 reasons why people are reluctant. But I'll and then we, address each of those. But I will say that the first thing I think people need to remember is that fundraising doesn't mean, oh, I know you, Linda, so I'm just going to call you up and say, would you please give me $1,000 for this great cause? Like that, it isn't like that. And I think people worry, or they think that it just means calling up and cold calling, like selling something. But actually it's a process. So the first thing we want to do is think about who would have a reason to care about this cause. Like, not everybody will be. There's some things that you care about, there's things that you don't care about. So if I know you, I hope I have a sense of the kinds of things that you're interested in. So we try to identify the right people. And then the next step is to cultivate them. Like, find a way to introduce that person to the work of the organization before you ask them for money. See what they care about. Like, let's say it's a school. Well, they might really care about the math curriculum, or they might care about college prep, or they might care about extracurricular things. So we want to get a little bit more of a sense. And then when you understand more about what the donor likes and they've had a chance to experience it, then it's much easier to introduce the idea of giving. And it can be, this program costs $50,000 a year, and we really are looking for people who might be interested in supporting it. Is this something that you would consider helping us with? And finding the right words to ask that. And sometimes people will respond so quickly and so generously, it just blows your mind. Sometimes they need to go talk to somebody or think about it, and so we need to follow up. But so cultivate and then ask, and if you need to follow up, follow up. Like, sometimes people just get busy and they forget.
That's true,
that's true. And then after that, it's not just sending a thank you note, but it's like really thanking them and being in touch with them and letting them know the impact that their gift made before you ask them for money again. And then you just keep going around. Like, if you do a good job with that, people are going to want to help.
Well, I wish I had known that when I started out as a baby fundraiser, because I'm type A. I was ready to go.
Go.
And the way I did my prospecting was, okay, you have money, I need it, and you need to give it to me. And it didn't work so well. I couldn't figure out why I wasn't having success. But then my mentors said, oh, come here, let me help you. And I quickly learned it doesn't work like that at all.
Well, you really learned, because you really do it well.
Oh,
and so,
thank you. Do you find that there are people of high wealth, especially when you're working with individual giving and major gifts, do you find that they are just waiting for you to ask for the gift, and they just want you they want to hear your spiel and give the pitch, and they want to be persuaded. You know, instead of maybe 20,000, they want to give 50, but they want to hear what the pitch is. What is your experience with that?
I think it depends, and you just asked such an interesting question, because I think the first thing I'd like to comment on is that there's no real correlation between net worth and generosity. So actually, if I like to define generosity as the share of what you have that you choose to give. So the typical Houstonian gives 2.3% of the money that they earn every year to charity. Some people give 50%. That to me is super generous.
That is. That really
some
is.
people give nothing. I don't, they're not generous. But like, let's just say that you're typical generosity, and you might be a millionaire and you are typical, so you give away 2%. I think that that some people lean in to give. They want you to bring them ideas. They know that they're fortunate. They know that they have the ability to support you to a larger degree than some others can, and they kind of want to help you get there. Mm-hmm. Others not. And so I guess my main point is, it's not about whether they have a lot of money or they don't have a lot of money. It's like how engaged they are. And so finding people who are generous and have a lot of money, mm-hmm. and who are the lean-in givers, like, that's the best thing of all.
Yeah.
And sometimes you start people out when they don't have a lot of money, and then they grow into their wealth and their professional maturity, and mm-hmm. then if they've been with you, then they're growing with their giving as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've had the good fortune of working with some large nonprofits here in Houston, and I actually worked here at U of H downtown, is where I started my professional career.
A large organization.
Yeah, working in the Office of Special Events, planning events for our donors, cultivating and making them feel great about their gifts. And I remember, not at this organization, at another organization, somebody said to me, "Oh, you guys in development, all you do is you have parties and you go to, have fun, and you're always wearing dresses." And so there was, I always got the feeling that people had this misconception that we were like,
a lightweight thing.
Right, that
mm-hmm.
we were the party girls, that it was super easy, and we were so lucky to be able to do what we do. And little do they know.
There's so much strategy involved.
There's a lot of strategy. Mm-hmm. Can you think of any other misconceptions that maybe people have about fundraising?
Oh, it's so funny. I think some people think, you hear a lot of jokes, oh, you're just, you're coming after my money, or you're this or you're that, or it's all about parties. And I think actually philanthropy is such a big and serious business. And, nonprofits employ about 10% of the workforce in Houston, and they need to be managed well, and it takes money to run them. So it's not it's not a lightweight activity. It's a very serious activity, and people's employment depends on it. Our society's well-being depends on it. And so I think that there are misconceptions, not just about fundraising, but about the nonprofit sector, that it's this sweet little thing that's over on the side of society, and mm-hmm. it doesn't really play a meaningful role in our economy and in our world and in our community. And actually, it's just critically important, and it keeps people going to school and fed, and all kinds of good things that are important.
Yeah, we're so lucky to be in Houston, where
you're not
people
kidding.
Are so philanthropic and
mm-hmm.
so willing to share their time and talent. We're very lucky. So, have you written a book?
I haven't.
You need to.
I have 10 books inside my head, but I need time to do.
Are any of them fundraising books?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
so what is the name of your book going
to
be?
I don't know yet. You can't ask me that because I haven't figured it out. I need to stop working with my clients so much and take time to do that.
Yeah. So I'm a nerd. I enjoy reading fundraising books. So as soon as you get yours published, I want to read your book.
Or we can collaborate on it.
Hey, let's do that. That would be great. So what are when you work with different clients, what do you find is their biggest kind of road bump? Like, what do they have the most trouble with? They have a great mission, they have a great board, and they're all ready to go. What is the thing that you have to help nonprofits with the most?
Well, I think one thing that that many nonprofits lack is the right staff. And part of that is because, as we were saying before, the sector has grown so much. And if the number of nonprofits has doubled in, say, 15 years, then by definition, only half the organizations can even find somebody who has 15 years of experience.
That's because it's hard.
It's difficult.
And we have to wear a dress every day.
Yeah. And so there's a talent shortage. There's a labor shortage of people who are experienced and qualified. And so that's one thing. Of just trained talent. And then the second thing is that the nonprofit sector doesn't pay as well as the for-profit sector. And so there are some people like you and me. I mean, I have a company, we work only with nonprofits, but we're not, making a lot of money isn't our main objective. And that is what you find with many, many nonprofits. But at the same time, people need to put food on the table, and they need to, send their kids to school and all that. So I think that there is a real pressure on nonprofits to pay for talent, because why shouldn't they have people who are as skilled and experienced and qualified as people in the for-profit sector? So I would say that that is one of the most limiting factors.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk about boards and their role in fundraising, and the importance of the board being involved, and what to look for when you're doing board development. Can you talk about boards?
Oh my gosh, yes. So
we need a whole nother 2 hours on that, I'm sure.
And this class has probably already heard about the 5 roles of any board of directors for nonprofit. So I will just say their strategic planning and strategy for the organization, the hiring and oversight and support of the executive director, the CEO, financial oversight, making sure that the money that comes into the organization is being used well, governance, meaning that the board is organized and composed and doing its job well. And then the last thing is fundraising. And fundraising is the part that boards fall down on all the time. And there was a big survey done nationally a few years ago that showed that 3/4 of executive directors were really happy with their boards in all areas, except only like 20% of them said their boards played the role in fundraising that they need them to do. And the reality is that board members, and you could write a book on this really, can help so much in fundraising because they're not being paid to do it. I mean, if I'm on your board and I call somebody that I know and ask them to join me at the luncheon, or ask them to write a check to support a program or whatever, they're going to look at me differently because it's not my job. I'm only doing it because I care about it. And so it's really important. And besides the fact that board members tend to be influential people that are well placed in the community, they can open doors that staff can't open all by themselves. And so it's just so critical that boards do that. And I think sometimes nonprofits don't explain that expectation when they're recruiting people, and then board members get on and they're a little bit surprised. I think, as you said before in an earlier question, so many people just aren't comfortable with the idea of fundraising. They're not really experienced with it, and they tend to shy away from it because they're just reluctant to ask people to do things. And so all of those combine, I think, to make it challenging. But I can say it's one of the areas where a board can make the biggest impact. And sometimes they can get started with it just by thanking donors. That's true. Just picking up the phone and thanking somebody who sent a check or provided some support, whether they know them or not. It's a great way to get into it.
So if I'm a young professional, which I am, by the way.
Very young.
Can I go somewhere to learn how to be a good board member? Where do you learn how to be a good board member?
Well, Rice University started a conference a few years ago, the Best Boards Conference. I think you've probably been to it. It's so funny when I often speak at it or attend it, and sometimes at least half the room is staff. But what we really want to do is get board members there, because so many people come to boards of directors of nonprofits with all the right intentions. They care about the cause, they want to contribute, but often they don't get oriented properly. They don't know enough about their organization. They don't know what the role of the board is. Maybe the board isn't being managed very well. And so how can you learn? I think part of it is incumbent upon the board itself. Like that governance responsibility is something that the chair of the board, and to a lesser extent the executive director and CEO, should take very seriously and make sure that they're providing the kind of training and guidance and good practices that will allow people to become higher functioning and really contributing board members. And then outside resources also.
So what are your thoughts about a nonprofit's saying, you know, we want you to consider being a board member. Here's the job description. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's really important, and we've seen more and more organizations creating a job description or a statement of expectations that says, here's what we hope you'll bring to the board. We hope that you all you know, show up at our meetings, that you'll serve on a committee, that you'll represent us in the community, that you'll make a financial contribution every year and bring others to the table. And then in return, we'll use your time well. We'll provide you with the information you need to make good decisions. Mm-hmm. We will run meetings on time and so forth. So I think it should be sort of a contract, not just a job description, but a two-way street.
So I have written job descriptions for the last 3 organizations that I've worked for, and you know, at first it felt a little weird that I'm telling these, you know, high-power professionals, you know, here's your job description. But, you know, they thanked me because they know exactly what's expected of them. And so there are no surprises.
Right,
because,
they want to know.
Yeah,
right.
Because they have limited time also, so they want to know exactly what am I getting into.
Yep, and sometimes it'll lead to a decision where a person says, maybe I should work on your committee, like a finance committee this year, or some kind of planning committee, and they'll ease into it that way, and then they will attend a couple board meetings maybe just through that committee work, but then they start to ease into it. And but I think, yeah, being very realistic about what you're hoping for and what the time commitment is. I mean, if your board meets every month and it's 3 hours long every month, that's really different from meeting quarterly for 1 hour.
Right. And I don't want to go to a meeting for 3 hours every month.
And some people are fine with it, but I agree.
So in terms of philanthropy and the idea of philanthropy at an organization, do you find that organizations that embrace the idea of philanthropy, from the receptionist to the president and CEO, do you find that those are more successful? And do you have any examples of any organizations that are doing that?
I do. I'm trying to think of one that does it really well. Actually, I think the food bank is a good one. So this whole idea of a culture of philanthropy is an idea that's been catching on. And I think the idea is that everyone in the whole organization, from the person who works at the front desk to the people who are outward-facing and inward-facing, volunteers and staff alike, understand that you are a nonprofit organization, that you rely on the community to support you, and you are an active representative of that organization. And that doesn't mean everybody is fundraising, but it means that everybody is helping to put the best foot forward and be just something as simple as friendly and welcoming. Or noticing if somebody's looking at something on your wall and you know something about it, then interact with them. And because philanthropy is not just giving money, it's time and money. And so building that sense of we're all in it together is just, there's nothing like it.
That's right. That's true. When I worked at Channel 8, we were going through the digital transition, and I know nothing about towers and wires and cameras. And so I would take one of the engineers with me, and I would tell them, I would coach them and say, make sure whatever you explain, it's kindergarten level, because nobody really cares about, unless the other person was an engineer as well.
Was a geek and wanted to hear it. Right.
But, and then, I mean, it was great for 2 reasons, because I brought the expert with me, and so the donor was impressed, but also then the production side of the house could see what's involved in fundraising, and now I've created a fundraiser.
It humanizes the whole thing.
It really does.
The people aren't ATMs who just spit money out at you, but it's a real person who really wants to know, how does that work?
Yeah.
Or what do you do with it?
What does this button do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
So who in Houston would you say is doing a really good job when it comes to fundraising? Who has like a machine? Who are the top 3 organizations in Houston?
Oh gosh, there's so many that do it well. I would say that KIPP does it really well, KIPP Public Schools. They, first of all, they have very core values that they share throughout the whole organization. And they're not just a machine because they generate a lot of money, although they do, but they have created very loyal donors, people who don't just come once and then leave, but people who stick with them year over year over year. And it's just beautiful, you know, to see that. I think that there are a lot of cultural organizations that do that very well. Not only big ones, but small ones also. Say, River Oaks Chamber Orchestra Alicia Lloyd does an incredible
She's amazing.
job. She is, like, if you could clone her and put her into innumerable organizations, the world would be a better place. But she's a great fundraiser, and she's a great musician, and she's a great leader and a good communicator. But she does a beautiful job. She creates programs that are unique. She brings people to that cause, and then in just the most charming and perfect way, she invites them to be part of it, and they love that. So those are two, very different organizations, and I could name so many others.
Yeah, yeah. So earlier we were talking about salaries, and most development people are overworked and underpaid, but there's quite a range. I mean, you could really make a lot of money in this business too. Can you talk about what some of those opportunities are?
Well, salaries have been rising significantly in the nonprofit world, and we subscribe to GuideStar's compensation analysis, which you've probably seen. It's as big as these old-fashioned phone books, and it's broken out by industry, by state, by city, by the size of the organization, by the subsector, and we've just been seeing incredible increases for the reason that I mentioned before. Like, you have to be able to compete to get talent, and so what we're seeing, or what we were seeing for a long time, is let's say a development director would leave one organization because they would be offered 20% more to go someplace else. Then the place they left had to pay 20% more to replace them. So it sort of started turning into an arms race.
Yeah.
And I think that although for a while some people thought, well, you work for a nonprofit, you shouldn't be paid very much. I think there's been a real change of heart, and I think that boards are looking at nonprofits more as businesses now, realizing that you really have to have the right people in the right jobs to get the right result. And if you have to pay more to do that, it's worth it, because otherwise, you will flounder, and in fundraising especially, it's a revenue generating position, so invest in it.
Well, and your fundraisers are on the front line, and they're the face of, I mean, when I was at Channel 8, I can't tell you how many times donors would call me and say, I can't get my signal to come on. I knew nothing about signals.
But you were the person they knew.
I was the Channel 8 girl.
Yeah, the concierge.
So, right, and so they would call me, and of course I would go down to the engineering department, get the answer, and then, I was the hero. But it's so dangerous to lose your development person, because they are the conduit to the donor, and the donors really build a relationship with their development officer.
Oh, I know. We're working with an organization now where they had a wonderful major gifts program, and that's an area of fundraising we didn't even talk about before, but that's where you really start to cultivate people, as you know, to give larger amounts of money year over year. And as you said, like, you develop very close personal relationships, and I don't want to imply that the person inside the nonprofit who has that contact is being shallow about it or only invested in the relationship because the person's giving money. It is not that. And you know that you had friendships, and you do now and in your previous jobs, where very, very authentic relationships that you build because of your shared concern about that cause. And if that person leaves, you can't just substitute another person in there and expect everything to translate right away. There's a lot of backing up and starting over and beginning to develop that relationship again. And the typical development person stays in the job, 3 years or so. And so if it takes 1 year to get up to speed, and then 1 year to really hit your stride, and then you start getting phone calls, or you decide for other reasons that it's time to go, it's hard to really get traction in that kind of a situation.
And sadly, a lot of nonprofit leaders don't fully understand that. So pay your fundraisers what they're worth. So in terms of salary, what would you say would be a starting salary for somebody brand new coming into an organization? And what is the range? How much can I earn if I've been in this business for 100 years and have been successful every single time?
Well, if you are, there are people in some of the larger institutions in Houston who earn, over $500,000 a year. Not too many of them, but there are a few. It is very common to earn six figures, very common. But there's such a difference depending on the kind of organization you go to work in. Small human service organizations don't have the resources to pay the higher salaries and benefits, so you might start at $35,000 a year and then work your way up. I would say that in the universities, medical center institutions, the larger cultural organizations, some of the larger health and human service organizations, where you have larger staffs, more sophisticated resources, then you can have salaries where you start out and it's not so far behind the private sector. So it's definitely improving.
Yeah, that's encouraging.
And we need talented people to go into the sector.
We do.
So,
we do.
So
I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people for different development roles, and it does take a special person to stay in development and to love it. I will say what I love about development is that I love meeting new people, and I love hearing their story, and I love helping them because they're looking for a perfect place to invest their money. And I feel so honored to be the agent that helps them do that.
Well put.
It's such a joy for me. So, the other great thing about fundraising is that, I mean, the older you are, the more mature you are, the more valuable you are because you have more connections in the community. And so that's another fantastic about this career is that you can do it as long as you want.
Oh, yes. You absolutely can.
So tell me why you love fundraising.
Well, I love it because there are, I like to see organizations grow. And I like to think strategically. And, to build the resources for an organization, you have to think about what they do, why they do it, what kind of a budget do they need to support it, and then what are the revenue streams that you can bring in to help make that happen. So development is part of it, but you want development to play just the right role. So in some organizations, all of the money that they generate is through contributions. More often, it's a combination. They might have tuition or fees, or they might have some other kind of earned revenue like tickets that they sell that they generate through marketing or things like that. So you want to put those two income streams together in just the right way so that they have that good mix. And it's nice for donors to know that their dollars are being used for things that you can't pay for any other way. So a good development person, I think, really thinks that way about the whole organization and about the role that contributed income plays in it. And then you have to figure out who will care about it, how are you going to go get it. And then I think good development people are super goal oriented, and they just get excited about hitting goals and seeing the work happen that the development income makes possible.
Well, and another great thing, because we have 20,000 plus organizations in the city, you're never going to run out of work.
Oh my gosh.
There's always work to be had.
We've worked with so many, I think maybe close to 250 in the last 28 years.
That is amazing.
It sounds like so many, but it's like 1%.
That's amazing. But you've worked with all the creme de la creme.
Well, a lot of them. So lucky.
I've seen your wall of honor.
I'm very lucky.
That's really unbelievable. Well, Dr. Bob told me I needed to check Twitter. So I want to make sure I do that. And there are some questions that students are asking.
Awesome.
So if you don't mind,
I would love to hear them.
We'll get into that. So, okay. So Rocio has asked a question. She says, while interviewing for development positions, what is one quality that you look for in a candidate?
One quality. It's so hard to just pick one. I think one is a true interest in the cause. I don't think people can raise money for just anybody.
I agree.
I mean, you can have the best technical skills in the world, but if what makes your heart beat is children, and you end up working in something that's serving, the aging or arts or something like that, it's not going to work. So I think the first thing is just a true passion for that cause, because it is going to fuel you. Yeah. And on top of that, there are lots of other qualities too.
Yeah. So I think if I had to pick one, I would say passion, which is really the same thing, but really somebody that can that has a story is always very helpful.
Agreed. Well, you have a personal story that I think that I don't know if all the students know, but I think it's compelling, and you bring it to your work.
Right, absolutely. So my passion is at-risk children and working with at-risk children. So I grew up in poverty, and so I'm in a position now where I can give back. And so if it doesn't have, if the organization doesn't work with at-risk children, I'm not really interested.
Well, and that's where you can make the biggest impact, because your life story multiplies your skills.
Right, absolutely.
You know, you're authentic in the way that you show up with that experience.
So Rocio, make sure you're passionate about whatever you're interviewing for. So let's see what else we have. So Martha Garcia, I know Martha because she volunteered at Career and Education Day.
She did? Oh
yes,
my gosh,
so
right.
Hello Martha, glad you're asking a question. She wants to know if there's such a thing as bad development, and have you encountered one?
There's lots of bad development. There's I could actually write a book on bad development too.
What not to do.
There's a lot of bad, I think one of the, and I'll try to keep this short, I think one of the biggest mistakes that happens in fundraising and development is not thanking and taking care of donors enough. I think too many organizations spend 98% of their time asking and not thanking and not explaining what impact it makes. And Spindletop Charities, I think, is the group that told me once how the percentage of organizations that they supported that did not even write a thank you note. And it just made me, cringe. And so I think having a real culture, not only of philanthropy, but part of that is gratitude. And so I think that is very, very important, is having people that have that a grateful mindset, I think, is important. And then there are lots of other things. You want to be original. You want to, take care of your information. Like if you're writing letters to ask people to support something, you need to make sure their name is spelled right.
Yes. Yes.
And that it's not mailed 3 weeks after it's written, and and all of that kind of thing. Just like attention to detail and being very, very careful, because it's a business that revolves around relationships. And every person you're touching is somebody who has thoughts and feelings and opinions and experience in the world, and so taking care of all of that, I think, is easier said than done. And I think many times, as you said before, development people can be overworked, underpaid, understaffed, and so it's easy to just kind of let stuff go. Right. But you want to stay on top of it.
So I have to tell this horror story. When I was at Channel 8, I was doing planned giving, and I had an intern that was helping me get out invitations for an event, and we misspelled this lady's name. She took us out of her will.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yes. So you are absolutely right. Donors they don't care if you have 10,000 donors. They want to know that that they are the only ones, and that when their birthday is, and you remember that they went to Hawaii for Christmas, and that they have a grandbaby named John.
And that's harder and harder now. Because we deal with more names, and we haven't talked yet about what the advent of technology has meant to development. On one hand, it's just such a great asset. Everybody should have a database. It should have all the right information so that you can remember that the grandbaby's name is John and that they went to Hawaii, because you can go in and enter that information, but you have to be able to enter it. You have to have the time or have somebody to do that. So I think that's one big thing. And everything is just moving so much faster. And so it's harder to take care of relationships well when everything is flying by you. So I think your point is super well taken.
Absolutely. Well, let's see. Thank you, Martha. So let's see. Stephanie has a question. She says, how did you get comfortable with the fundraising process?
It's funny because I mentioned that I started in advertising. And in advertising, you are selling a product or a service to somebody who will buy it, basically. I see fundraising as introducing a good cause to somebody who might support it. And that's the way I see it. Somebody who would enjoy supporting it. And so I just believe in the nonprofit sector so much. And people think that fundraising is really about money, and it's about money because money, changes hands. But I think it's really about fueling the nonprofit sector. It is about making things happen that otherwise would not happen in this world. And money is something that is needed to make these nonprofits go on. And so for me, I'm very comfortable with it because most people are charitable.
Right.
And if you ask in the right way and at the right time and for the right thing, people will never be upset with you. That doesn't mean they'll give to you every single time, but you're giving them a chance to. And it's really for a noble cause. And I just believe that with all my heart. And
well, we're so lucky that now U of H Downtown has this master's program in nonprofit managers.
There was no school for that for the longest time.
So, I mean, we didn't have that. For us, it was trial and error. And, you know, kind of feeling our way through the dark. So we're so lucky that we have all of these fantastic fundraisers that are coming.
I agree.
This is really great news.
I'm super excited because things that we had to stumble around and figure out ourselves, they're coming out already knowing.
Absolutely.
And they can hit the ground running and be 10 years ahead of where I was.
I remember the first time, my very first ask when I did corporate relations at the Alley Theater, I was going to Bank of America. And nobody taught me how to do this. I'm type A. I just thought, I can figure this out. So as I was walking over to Bank of America, I thought, how am I going to ask them for money? And then something popped in my head that said, you're not asking money for you.
Right.
It's for the organization,
right.
An organization that you feel. And from that moment on, it was so easy for me because I'm the lucky agent that gets to deliver the message.
It's brilliant, and I think you're absolutely right. And one thing that I love about the millennial generation is they're very cause-oriented. You know, really super caring about what's happening in the world around them. And so I think it's not going to be as hard for them to get over that fear because they love getting on board with things that are making the world better.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's a brilliant point.
So we have a few more minutes. I'd like to know, what is your favorite restaurant in Houston?
Oh my gosh.
This is important to know.
It is important to know. Well,
there's two things. I want to know what is your favorite restaurant, and then what is your favorite restaurant where you like to take donors? Because this is important.
Well, it is because the donors part, like it has to be nice, but it can't be too nice.
Right, because then it looks like you're spending their money on niceties.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to be able to hear.
You do. Being able to hear.
Restaurants are tricky.
And thinking about what they like.
Right.
So
do you ask them?
I sometimes will offer a choice, like choose two completely different kinds of things and say, how about this or this, and then let them select.
Yeah.
I love Mockingbird. I love that place. I love Underbelly.
Dr. Bob likes Mockingbird also.
He does? I've never seen him there. There are just so many restaurants in Houston. It's incredible.
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
I like this funny little place on 19th Street called Vietnam Restaurant.
Cool.
Have you been there?
No, but I have to try it out.
It's very good. Write that down.
All right, I am.
I don't know about taking a donor there, but it depends. It depends on which one. So what is your favorite, best-kept secret spot in Houston?
Oh, best-kept secret spot. It's not a secret. I love the, like if people come here, I love the Rothko Chapel. I think it's just the most phenomenal place. Somebody told me once that when MD Anderson is recruiting people, they take people they want to fall in love with Houston to the Manila Collection and to Central Market. And I thought that was pretty brilliant. I love the water wall.
Yes, I was going to say the water wall.
It's fantastic.
I love the water wall. It's so fun.
And you just go there and it kind of transports you for a little while. There's so many places. I love Memorial Park. I love the New Buffalo Bayou Park, in part not just because of what it is, but because you see everybody from Houston. It's like a slice of life. So you're out there and you can do your thing, but you can definitely feel like you're out in a community of people that's pretty
Now that is the perfect example of a successful fundraising campaign.
Oh my gosh, the Buffalo Bayou Park.
The Buffalo Bayou Park.
And now the Houston Parks Board, which we're having the privilege of working on, is actually acquiring land along every bayou in Houston and connecting trails along 10 bayous so that people will eventually be able to get on their bikes or walk 150 miles. Like, who would have thought that that could happen in Houston? So Houston's dreaming pretty big these days with green space.
So there's no reason not to dust off your bike and get on it and
Correct.
Go take a ride.
Exactly.
So Once they make a play about Kimberly Sterling, who's playing you?
Oh my gosh, it would have to be Meryl Streep, right? Except she's 10 years older than I am, maybe. I don't know. Renee Zellweger? I have no clue.
Yeah.
Who would play you?
Jennifer Lopez, of course.
Of course.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, I've had so much fun visiting with you.
I have
Thank
too.
you.
And I just hope that all the students who are enrolled in this course go into the nonprofit sector, because there's nothing better in the whole world.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you have enjoyed meeting my friend Kimberly, and I hope you enjoyed having me for class tonight. And if you didn't, don't tell Dr. Bob. And hope everyone has a nice evening. Thank you and good night.